Fine.
Welcome, Lori.
Hi,
Okay,
Lori.
and now you're ready to go live. We're gonna go live. I'll tell you when.
Sure. Build the pressure. Go ahead.
Drum roll. Okay, and Victoria, since you have Facebook open, tell us when you.
hmm
Okay,
I will.
thank you.
I am not sure. Just let me know when to go. I don't see it going live yet.
Not yet.
It says it's coming. Let's see.
Because, on the top, you can actually
Oh,
see.
you know what? I have to put.
Mm.
It's asking for a title,
Oh,
so I'm gonna put the title of it. Okay, we should be ready. Okay, that's what it was.
sure. Take your time.
Okay, now we're going.
Yeah,
All right, Victoria, let us know.
I can see we're live on Facebook. Hare
hmm
Krishna. Welcome, devotees. Thank you so much for joining us. Hare Krishna, Lori, Stella, Shraddhanjali Prabhu, Pavani Prabhu, and all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a requested session. We've received requests from many Vaishnavis with questions, and we've also received some letters expressing their concern as to why we're having this session. So I thought I'll come in here first and, just say a little few words of what the idea of the ministry is when we are hosting such sessions. Um, the Vaishnavi ministry is actually just trying to be a support system for Vaishnavis all over the world, and specifically as North American Vaishnavis for North America as well in person. But with the benefit of technology, we're able to reach Vaishnavis all over the world, and I hope they're finding some value in whatever we're trying to offer. So Vaishnavi Ministry is a support system. Y'all are deciding what we bring here for you. So with our surveys that we're doing, with our sessions, with our feedback forms, Vaishnavis have been asking us for, having some yoga sessions, having something on Ayurveda, some practical information on COVID and vaccine. So when we're doing that, that really does not mean that we're promoting one way or the other. As the Vaishnavi ministry, we're not promoting anything. We are just helping you make educated decisions. So when devotees started writing to us asking for sessions, whether vaccines are good, what do they what do they have, we started looking out for Vaishnavi speakers who are working very closely with that field to bring them to you, so you can ask your questions and then make an educated decision whether you want a vaccine or you don't want a vaccine, or you think one way or the other. It doesn't matter. We're just bringing here, and we want you to know we are your support team. So anything that we bring here is because you've asked for it. And just I wanted to put this disclaimer out here. So it's our great honor and privilege, my privilege, to actually welcome Shama Gopi Devi. She's an initiated disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. However, she has a wonderful academic career as well. She is a PhD in biochemistry, and she's been working with Rush University. She's written 30 plus publications in medical journals, over 600 citations. Her understanding, her specialty has been in molecular pathogenesis of infectious disease. This past whole year, she has been working on COVID samples, understanding how they affect the liver, the kidney, I think she can explain a little bit more. This is all going above my head. But, just reading her bio was just, I was in awe. I've known her as a good friend, a very wonderful, dear devotee, enthusiastic. And I thought bringing this combination of a wonderful devotee practicing, understanding our questions, and then having this academia to understand the science and bringing that perspective in would give us a good insight as to making our own decisions, whether we wanted to understand the COVID a little bit more, what precautions we can take, some things about the vaccine, or any questions you might have. I'm sure she's willing to help us with all that. So thank you so much, Shamagopi Prabhu, for joining us. And thank you so much to all the devotees that have joined us on this Zoom call and on our Facebook Live. If the devotees joining on Facebook Live do not want to join in the Zoom call, I request our team, Victoria or Tiffany, to please post a link over there in case they want to come in personally and ask some questions. We leave some questions for the audience towards the end. What we did is, we received some questions in the email, and our team has put together some questions that keep coming up for the COVID vaccine and COVID-19 in general. So we thought we'll, deal with those first. And then if you have any questions, please post them. We'll bring you in. You can ask Shamagopi. And, let's understand this a little bit more and make our educated decisions. So thank you so much again, Shamagopi, for joining us and willing to do this session with us. So I want to start this off with tell us a little bit about, in brief, a little bit about the research that you've been working on for the past year since the COVID-19 has hit. And I know you've been super busy, working on the samples. Give us a little insight about what you're really trying to research, just a little understanding.
Thank you, Govind Priya, and thank you for the wonderful Vaishnavi ministry and the team. So enlightening, enlivening, and encouraging to me. So I'm very, very grateful to all of you for giving me this opportunity. And special thanks to Tiffany and Victoria and whosoever worked for them in the background. I really want to thank everybody. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to serve. And I look forward to any questions or anything as Govind Priya already said. So I'll be very happy to answer as much as I know. So if it is in my jurisdiction, I'll try to answer. If it is not, I can guide you to some resource where you can find the answers. So I'm not perfect. I'm just trying to learn. This virus is new for all of us, So whatever I know, I'm here to share with all of you. So, and as Govind Priya already put that thing out, that this presentation or answering any questions, at least there is no bias in my mind, although I am vaccinated. So I already took my 2 doses of Pfizer vaccine, but that doesn't mean that what I'm saying or what I'm doing, everybody has to do the same thing. So after this presentation, if you feel satisfied with your questions or if you still have doubts lingering, it's totally up to you. The choice is yours. So vaccine is very individual choice. So make your choice and go for it. Or if you decide, that's also fine. So this is not a presentation to tell what you should do. It's just a presentation where we will present the facts as it is. So thank you once again. And Govind Priya, thank you for the question. So as of now, I work at the Rush Memorial Hospital. So I have worked at Northwestern University also for good 10 years, I would say. So I joined this Rush Memorial Hospital in Chicago as a research scientist last year, like 2019, basically, little mid of 2019. And my work, so I am exactly in Department of Internal Medicine. And in that specifically, I work in nephrology division. So nephrology is the science of kidneys or renal diseases. And as we all know that 30% of patients like that come with COVID infection ultimately develop either severe or moderate form of kidney disease. And in some cases, it has been so severe that they require dialysis or ultimately it ended in renal failure. So because my lab where I work is primarily focused on understanding kidney diseases, we have screened like many, many thousands of patients with corona virus, like their urine, their serum samples. And what exactly we are trying to understand is that how the renal parameters are changing and how that is a kind of marker, or you can say that it's anybody who has um, predisposing history of renal diseases, or even those who didn't have it. Actually, ultimately, many deaths happened because of renal failure. So what we don't understand right now, that how COVID-19 directly impacts the kidney. So that is what exactly I'm trying to understand. Before this COVID pandemic, my project was to understand how the thyroid hormone function and kidney function actually overlap. But once this pandemic started in 2019 December, our lab got some funding to work on COVID. So I really switched gears from thyroid and kidney. Now I am COVID and kidney. So I'm also like very new in this research, but at least we know for sure that how COVID-19 is actually affecting the kidneys, which was like something very new that we have found. So
Thank you. Thank you for giving that insight. And I really, really appreciate your honesty and, the fact that you're out there to share whatever knowledge you know. I mean, when the COVID came about, we all were like, oh, it's going to be a passing phase, it's going to be gone. It's like a small disease. And then it became a pandemic. And now it's, we're all having to face, no, not knowing which part of the world we're from, we're still all impacted because of the COVID. We're having to stay home. So many lives have been lost and so much has happened. How do you see this COVID ending? And how do you see, um, what do you foresee for this COVID pandemic? How is it ending? And any insights you have for this?
So when you talk about foreseeing it, Govind Priya, I wish I can have a crystal ball where we can just ask the crystal ball and the person behind, like who's making that crystal ball work, to ask them that what does future hold for us. So actually what no one knows yet is that when and how the pandemic will end, so what happens, what is going to happen next, we know. We all have suffered in one way or the other because of this pandemic. So what happens next, it will actually depend on the virus and our response to that virus. So there is a organization, it's called as CIDRAP. It's called as, like, its full form is Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy. So they have indicated, like they have given some indication that the COVID-19 outbreak won't last until 60 to 70% of human population becomes immune to the virus. And this can only happen either through vaccination, or we get COVID-19 naturally, like we get in contact with somebody who has COVID, we get COVID and we get antibodies made in our system for COVID, or we get vaccination and get antibodies for COVID. So these are the only two ways how we can become immune to this virus. But having said that, like now we all know that, like influenza virus, we know that causes seasonal flu. It's quite slippery, right? That virus mutates very rapidly. That is why every year we have a revised shot, right? Shot we have to take every year. But now we know for COVID that that is also mutating, right? So it is possible that even though we are seeing decline in cases right now in many cities and many countries, there is always a possibility that we see surges when there is a new strain emerges. So it's very likely. So it is possible that we may have to just learn to live with this virus, just how we have learned to live with seasonal flu. So we just go every year, get our vaccination, or some people don't opt for vaccination. That's also fine. But there are currently 200 respiratory viruses that are circulating in the world, and we live with them, right? So I think COVID-19 will just become one of the many. So for us right now, what we can do is to contribute to the demise of this virus in our personal life. So what we can do is, like I just say, vaccine and 3 Ws. Like 3 Ws is like wash, wear, and watch. So you wash your hands, you wear the mask, and you watch the distance basically. So by practicing social distancing, wearing mask, and washing our hands, not putting them in nose, ears, mouth, any mucous membrane basically. And if you opt for getting if you opt for vaccine, then vaccine is another way. So these are the this is what I foresee. This is how pandemic could end. Like
Hmm. I mean, you touched a little bit on the point of immunity, you know, And there's different ways, like we had somebody come in from Ayurveda some time back, and they were expressing every field of science, whether it's herbology, Ayurveda, they all talk about building, strengthening your immunity. Um, and yeah, so there's definitely ways of, from what I understand from you, is how to build immunity is going to depend on our ability to withhold either not getting the virus or not being affected by the virus. Am I correct?
Yes.
So building stronger immunity. Now, I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about, I know you explained that either getting a vaccination or, just naturally contracting COVID, being with someone and then building the antibodies. Can you explain a little bit about the vaccination?
Right.
How does that confer immunity, and just a little bit more?
Okay, so actually, our bodies are very well equipped with the ability to recognize what is self or what is native to the body and what is foreign to our body or what is non-self, basically. So that system in our body, like we are equipped with that system in our body that can discriminate between self and non-self. So whatever is native, the body protects, and whatever that is not native, the body tries to kill it. And this particular system, as you were asking about immunity, right? So the system is called as immune system. And when that functions, it leads us to generate immunity. So what happens when our body actually sees a foreign material like a germ or a bacteria or a parasite, then what happens? The immune system becomes active, and then it tries to mount a defensive response so that these foreign invaders can be killed. So this response is nothing but just generation of antibodies. And what are antibodies? They are simple molecules that actually target these germs and kill it. Like that's the simplest language I can put that in. And our body also has the mechanism where it can generate memory cells. So memory cells actually store information on how to fight this virus or how to fight any germs, basically, if they are encountered again. So how it had killed the virus and fought with the virus previously, that information is stored in the memory cells. So basically the immune response is generation of antibodies and generation of memory cells. There are two aspects to that. So
Mhm.
now what happens? Vaccines exactly work on the same principle. The only difference is that we haven't gotten the disease. We are healthy already and we take the vaccine, right? So what happens is that vaccine already contains the germs that cause the disease, but those injected germs are inactivated or their exposure is controlled in such a way that they will not cause the disease in our body, but they will cheat our immune system in a way to generate antibodies against the germs, so that when the vaccinated individual is later exposed to the actual germs in the environment, the pre-existing antibodies that we have generated because we have taken immunization or vaccination, those pre-existing antibodies will destroy those germs even before they can cause infection. So that is how they confer immunity. So as Govindpriya rightly said, there are only two ways: either you get the virus and generate antibodies and memory cells, or you get vaccination without having to go through the whole ordeal of getting infected and recovering from it. You get the vaccination and you develop antibodies. So
So the bottom line from what I hear is building the antibodies is
correct.
what is important. Now that can happen through a natural infection or through getting a vaccination, right?
Mhm.
So I'm just thinking, I mean, if everyone gets a natural infection and we all build antibodies, so we're automatically protected.
Yeah, why do we need vaccination? Let everybody get naturally infected, right? And develop antibodies. So a
Yeah.
very nice and intelligent question, actually. Thank you. Govindpriya. So
It's a lame person's question. I'm just wondering that, if everybody's going to get infected and build antibodies, then maybe there's no, then why is the question of every year vaccination and getting a vaccination? Yeah, just, if you think this question is worthy of your answer.
please, Govindpriya, thank you so much. I'm very happy that you all have such intelligent and bright questions. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So what you are talking about is a right concept, actually. So it's called as herd immunity. So here we are going to discuss two different things. So what is herd immunity? I mean, this word has become very popular these days, like yoga and meditation has become so popular. I feel herd immunity is like one such word that has
Maybe
become so
your
popular.
circle.
What's
I've
that?
heard it for the first time.
Oh,
I don't know
really?
about our others audience here. Anybody wants to unmute and say, have you heard herd immunity before? You have? Wow, I am uninformed.
Okay. So it's called as herd immunity or it's called as community immunity. So it is true that when a large population becomes immune, either from having a natural infection or by vaccination, then virus can no longer find any susceptible people or susceptible host that it can infect, right? And when virus cannot infect, definitely it cannot spread it. So it's a very viable system. Like let everybody become infected, and then the virus will stop, right, spreading. So there are some groups of people who have come up with this idea that let infection spread without taking precautions, and in that ways herd immunity will be achieved and then we will be protected. So this is a very common understanding, and this concept seems very logical, right? But I just want to try to put some stats over here for our understanding. And maybe if you all have not done math in a long time, this is the time maybe you can pick up a pen and paper and see how this goes. Actually, it's very interesting. I was doing it in the night, and when I got up in the morning, I was so excited that I have to finish this math. It's like quite interesting. So if you all have a pen and paper, maybe you can
Fun
follow.
exercise we have here.
Yeah, sure.
Make COVID a little more fun.
Yep. So we have suffered enough from COVID. So time to understand it and have fun.
Okay.
So let's see. So for herd immunity, as I said, right, that CIDRAP, that organization had already predicted that until 60 to 70% people have become immune to this virus, it's very difficult for the pandemic to end. And it could be either via both ways, right? Like, so I'm not one over the other. So let's see, does anyone know what is the world's population right now?
Does anyone know? Please unmute yourself. I'm not the right person to answer questions like these. Does anybody know the world population right now?
I
Please
think it's
say
8
I think
billion.
Laurie is trying to say something. Can people unmute themselves? I don't know.
7.8 billion.
8 billion.
8 billion.
Yeah, so I would say 7 billion because I did my calculations like that, but you were right. Like it's a little bit above 7 billion. So it's very close to 8 billion. Thank you so much. Whosoever answered, thank you. So maybe on the paper, we can write the world population as 7 billion. So that's our basic number. Now for 70% people to have immunity with this virus, how many people have to be infected with this virus? So we can do 70% of 7 billion. And just for calculation, I can say like 1 billion has 9 zeros. So you can. I was the worst student in math, really, trust me. So
Okay, I'll surpass that. Okay, so some math geniuses are going to do this math.
It's actually 3/4, isn't it? 70% is very close to 3/4.
3/4, yes.
It's 75%. So this is
70%.
it's a lot of people.
A lot of people.
Victoria Jani has something up.
Oh my God, Victoria, you are so awesome. I love you. This is amazing. Yeah. So basically 4,900 million people have to be infected with this virus.
Wow.
So just right. So 7 billion people on the top is the world's population. Then we have 70% people if we have to infect them. So basically that numbers come down to 4,900 million. So 4,900 million people have to be infected with this virus. Now, as of today, does anyone know how many people have been already infected with this virus? Because our target is 4,900 million, right? We want those many people to be infected. So does anyone know how many of them are infected now?
Come on, Google help.
Google help me.
I've stopped looking at the stats because sometimes it's depressing. So I have no idea. Does anybody else know?
Johns Hopkins provides the data, but it's just for United States, right? It's not.
Yeah, globally. Yeah. I'm looking for global numbers. Basically, it's 110 million people have been infected with this virus.
That's it?
Yep. So only 110 million people have been infected with this virus. And out of this 110 million people, 25 million approximately have died from this virus. So now we will do a little calculation that if 110 million cases are there, like right now, 110 million people have been infected and there are 25 million deaths. imagine if we are attaining this target of 4,900 million infections, more infections, how many deaths are we looking at?
Hmm.
Does
Wow.
anyone want to do that? Like, it's simple. 110 leads to 25 million deaths. So 4,900 million will lead to how many deaths? In
Some math.
India, we used to call it as a unitary method. I don't know. Govind Priya, you would know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's-
Victoria, awesome. Like, it's basically approximately 1,100 million deaths that we are looking more. So 25 million people have already died, and we are expecting 1,100 more deaths, basically 1,100 million more deaths to come. Then only we can say that the planet has achieved like herd immunity, or everybody is immune. Basically, now the infections won't spread. And just for this information or an eye opener, I was looking at WHO website. They say that right now only 2% of world's population is infected. So it's 110 million cases out of 7 billion. It comes to around 1.5 to 2. But WHO says it 5% because there are some underreported cases or some places testing not happening. So just consider right now only 5% of the population globally is being infected with this virus. And we are talking about having 70% infections. So it had already caused havoc when it is only 2% right now, just not globally, on our personal lives, right? Socially, personally, financially, mentally, right? And here we are talking about infecting 4,900 million more people that might correspond to. So this is all hypothetical, right? But it might correspond to 1,100 million deaths we have to see. So there is one scientist, actually, he said herd immunity is hard immunity. So it's not considered as an option. So we don't want people to be infected. Generally, when herd immunity is attained, that large population has already been immune, it's never by natural infection, because that's too dangerous, right? Especially for dangerous diseases. When we talk about herd immunity, it is mostly achieved by mass vaccination. So herd immunity we should not be looking forward to that most people should get infected, and then I'll
Is
become.
it possible to, I hate crashing in, but is it possible to ask a question?
Yes, please. Please do.
I'd like to know how these numbers reflect people with autoimmune diseases.
Yeah, sure. That's what.
Has any research been done on, because the results are not the same, or don't look like they're the same as people with a fully functioning immune system. I mean, they have lots of medications and things to boost an immune system, but when you don't have one that's working, they don't work.
Right.
And I'm wondering, in that arena, has anybody done that research, and what would be the percentage of people that can't be added into these numbers? Is that
Bhavani
a
Devi
feasible
Prabhu,
question?
thank you. Yeah, I get your question. So basically, your question is that in these numbers, so basically these numbers are just put by me, like my understanding. So there is no research that has been done where these numbers are coming from, that, okay, if we need to infect 4,900 million people, then we will have 1,100 million deaths, right? It's just a correlation that I'm drawing, that if 110 million people were infected, 25 million deaths happened. So, and these 25 million people, mostly I would say, were people who were immunocompromised and were not able to take the COVID infection in their body. So you were right that these deaths are not mostly in the younger population, but mostly with the older population that had underlying medical conditions or immunocompromised. So totally. So there is definitely a statistics on that, which I'm not aware of right now, that how this 25 million is categorized, like who died basically and who recovered. So but what you are saying is absolutely right. This number can totally topple or change, or can increase or decrease based on a person's individual immune system. Totally.
So none of these numbers can be actually accepted as such. They're just like a guideline and a number to go on, right?
Yes. Yes.
For research to be done, and then
Yes.
so, but it's very fluid, isn't it? Really, it is. It has to be, really.
So basically, the point that I was trying to make through this whole number thing is that herd immunity is not the way to go for at least COVID-19, because it's very contagious. It's not like flu virus. Like some people think it's exactly the same as flu. No, like there is a lot of differences between flu and COVID-19. And if somebody wants to really go into the details, can go to the CDC and or WHO website. Their transmission rate is different, the way they infect is different, their fatality rate is different, their incubation time is different, their symptoms are different, and their ultimate like consequences, they are also different, so there's a lot of differences. So basically, instead of promoting that let's everybody have this infection and there is no need to take precautions, would be a very disastrous or dangerous idea. And the second thing, because I said in the beginning, we'll be discussing two things, right? So first is herd immunity. So that's not an option that we will allow ourselves to get naturally infected because it's dangerous for us. The second thing is that the Pfizer, actually, the vaccine, that Pfizer vaccine released a research paper. It's in New England Journal. I mean, it's NEJM, New England Journal. It's a scientific journal, basically. They have studied this, and they have shown that actually the amount of antibodies that are produced in a person who is vaccinated. So these antibodies, I told, right, they are against this virus. So they destroy the virus. So these antibodies are called as neutralizing antibodies. So they neutralize the virus or they counter the virus. So the amount of antibodies that can neutralize the virus in a vaccinated individual is much, 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 much higher than the antibodies produced in a person who had acquired COVID-19 from natural infection. So this suggests that vaccination is actually more effective and maybe long lasting. So there's no study as of now that is done that how long will the vaccine protection last. But what they have studied is that the amount of antibodies and the duration for which the antibodies stayed in our blood is much higher when we get vaccination than if we allow ourselves to be naturally infected. So it just says that vaccines could be a more protective or a more effective option if we are trying to simply depend on getting infection naturally may not be the best course. And I was just reading Bhagavad Gita this morning, and I came across this verse from 12:15. Krishna says in that verse, so Krishna speaks a series of verses, which are 8 verses, and there Krishna is telling that who is a devotee who is most dear to him. I was going through some challenges in my life, and I was trying to improve myself, that what can I do? I can become dear to Krishna, become dear to devotees. So I came across with this verse, and this verse is so beautiful. It says, Yasman no dvijito loka, loka no dvijite chaya. So one who does not put others into difficulty, or neither he himself gets distressed under challenging situation, that devotee is dear to Krishna. So as of now, we shouldn't be praying. So I was thinking, oh my God, when people talk about herd immunity, basically, are they waiting for their brothers and sisters to get infected so that we get protected? I don't think I want to put anybody in distress because I want to be safe, So anyway, so best way is to continue take precautions and not wait people to get infected so we can be protected, So that's what I
It's
would
so
say.
beautiful, Shamagupi, that you brought out the Bhagavad Gita verse. And that is the life of devotees, that, we're not here to, oftentimes I see there's debates between devotees. Should I wear a mask? Should I not wear a mask? If that just makes somebody else comfortable, even whether it works or not, if it makes someone else comfortable, I might as well do it, you know. And thank you so much for, this is why we like bringing devotee speakers to even present science to us, because they bring our perspective in. And this is what we want. We want to get this information within our community and really truly try to understand how the course of a devotee's life. So beautifully put there. Now, it brings me to your next question over here. So I understand, okay, if I take a vaccination, I develop antibodies, and I'm just going to kind of try to do some little bit of reflective speaking here, listening here. But I've heard that vaccinations, they help with me not getting the disease, but at the same time, they're not very effective, or they're not been effective with me being a carrier of these disease or transmitting these to someone. So I could be not infected, but I infect someone else. Once I'm vaccinated, I take off my mask, I do what I want to do, and then infect everybody else. And then again, the 12th chapter comes to our mind. So is that a fact? Do you have any studies or science to back this up or something?
Thank you, Govind Priya. This is beautiful. So basically, your question has two parts to it. And the first part is what will vaccine do to me if I contract? So can I contract COVID-19 when I have a vaccine, when I already vaccinated? And the second part is, okay, I may not get the disease if I'm vaccinated, but am I still susceptible to transmitting it to others? So these are the two parts to your question. So thank you so much. So I'll go in two parts then. It has two parts. So first is contracting the virus ourselves. So that's the first part. So short answer I would give is that yes, the person who gets vaccine or the person who is vaccinated will be definitely protected from the disease, but that doesn't mean we will be protected from infection. So there are two different things. One is being infected and one is getting disease. So what is the difference between two is infection means basically you acquire the virus, but having disease means the virus becomes so much in our body that we start to develop symptoms that somebody diagnose it as a disease. So basically what happens when we are vaccinated against COVID-19, it is possible that we might still contract the virus by coming in contact with somebody who is having COVID-19 virus. But the only good thing about the vaccine is that, yes, we will not become severely sick. That might require hospitalization. So it won't be that severe. So symptoms can be mild or it could be asymptomatic, as Govind Priya said. We could be the carriers, right? And the symptoms would be mild or maybe moderate. That totally depends on everyone's immune system, right? Because every one of us is different. We all have different immunities. Even from the same vaccine, how our body responds is totally different. So we cannot say one shoe fits all, right? It never works that way. So, and also we don't know, there are cases where people took the vaccine, but vaccine takes time to develop immunity, right? Vaccine is not like you got the vaccine today, next hour you are immune to the virus. It takes around a week to develop the immunity. So in that time frame, there are cases where people have contracted COVID-19 and the symptoms were little more severe because the body is not yet immune to the virus. So it's very likely that when we have COVID-19 vaccine, we can still acquire the disease, but the symptoms are kind of not very severe. Like it definitely doesn't require hospitalization or any other excessive care, basically. So in either case, like whether our symptoms are, whether we are asymptomatic or whether the symptoms are mild, vaccination is not only expected to reduce the burden on the medical system, right? Because that is also, then why get vaccination if I can still get the disease, like virus or maybe sometimes disease? No, but it can reduce the burden on the medical system. And there are limited facilities. We know all throughout this pandemic how the hospitals were crowded. People were not given enough health care because they were jammed with patients, right? And this will also save us from the whole ordeal of becoming a COVID survivor, right? Why would we want to do that? So we don't want to do that, right? So, and the second question, so I would say that definitely we can get the infection, but we may not get the disease. So that is my short answer. And then spreading to others, like that's the second part, right? So again, the short answer is that scientists are actually still learning that if vaccines can prevent us from spreading the virus, even if I don't become sick, can I still spread it? So we have to know that when transmission happens, like when does transmission happen? The transmission only happens when enough viral particles from my body, like, so I'm infected and I have viral load, basically, or viral particles, those particles get into the body of someone who is not infected, right? And that is how, so in theory, you can say anyone who is carrying the virus potentially can transmit it, right? But the only thing is that, however, if the virus gets into the body of a vaccinated individual, then what happens? There is very less chance that this virus can multiply or can be copied or expanded because we have antibodies. So they'll try to kill the virus. So definitely the viral load will be reduced. And if we don't have enough virus, we won't be shedding it. It's called as shedding, viral shedding, basically. So if the amount of virus in our body is low, the probability of transmitting it also will sometime will reach to almost zero or nil, I would say, right? But having said all this, we know that the virus is like mutating and new strains are emerging, right? So there is still potential that I'm vaccinated, like I've taken Pfizer, right? So studies are still in progress if Pfizer can protect from the mutant strains and how effective that protection would be. So it's still possible that I'm vaccinated for the parental strain, but I may not be protected against the mutant strain, right? So I still remain a carrier for that deadly strain that has evolved, basically, right? So it totally depends how effective our vaccines are against the emerging strains and how deadly the virus is in transmitting. So there is a balance of both the things that will determine whether we can spread it or not spread it. So I may not spread the COVID parental strain, but if I get the COVID mutant strain, I can still spread it, right?
Sure.
So
Wow. Yeah. I know this is a lot of overwhelming information, and she's trying to present it so simply. It's amazing. I now that I'm thinking about this whole vaccination and this, as devotees, we're always concerned about, we're looking at ingredients most of the time. I think I spend more time in the grocery store looking at ingredients of things and uh, injecting something in our body. We want to, we want to know where it's coming from. What kind of is it a vegetarian source? What are we really injecting in our bodies? Do you have any information about the ingredients? I know I don't even think we have choices right now about vaccinations, right? We probably don't even have a choice whether we get Moderna or Pfizer or whatever. We don't even have choices. But do you have any idea about the ingredients, or is it devotee friendly per se? you know, um, you
so
have anything to say in that?
yeah, thank you, Govindpriya. So yeah, I would say like I have information about Pfizer and Moderna. Like per se, I've done some research on AstraZeneca vaccine too, but both Pfizer and Moderna, which are being secured by mostly the developing countries like United States of America, and I would say 50% of the Europe, they also have AstraZeneca DNA vaccine. But in at least US, I would say Pfizer and Moderna are the two prime candidates that are on rollout. And both of these vaccines are, I would say they are not just vegetarian, they are like vegan vaccines. So they do not have any components that are derived from either humans or animals. And this is also confirmed by another organization, which is called as MHRA, and that is like Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. So they confirm that these vaccines are actually free from any human or animal derived products. And if anyone of you would be interested in looking at exact components, basically it's lipids and salts. So lipids means fats basically. So not animal fat, I mean to say, like stearic acid and those that are found in butter and all that stuff. So those kind of fats, it has like mRNA, which is the molecule that gives us protection. And then it has sugar like sucrose, what sugar is, like common sugar. And it has like a nanoparticle that is made up of the lipids or fats. So if any one of you would be interested in exactly knowing, like it's like N-steroyl 5 palmitoyl, like it's a huge name for those lipids. If you all want to know specific information about the components, FDA website has it actually in great detail, even how much milligram is being put in the vaccine. So we all can go back to the FDA website, or I have written a couple of articles, like maybe I can share it with Govindpriya and she can share with the Vaishnavi ministry. So that has details of all those components. Having said again all this, I really want to tell all of you that even though these vaccines do not contain human or animal components, they were definitely tested on animals. So if somebody has that kind of thing that I won't be using anything that is even tested, like people don't use shampoos or cosmetics that are tested on animals, I would like to tell that these vaccines, or it's not just these vaccines, any medicine that we take, even if it is Tylenol, or it's like even Ayurveda. Like I have so many letters from Srila Prabhupada where he's explaining his disciples that even Ayurveda had to undergo like uh, herbs and everything. They have to be tested. Like it's not just a product of random imagination or speculation. They have to test it on animals, like, and they find out that this drug can work or this vaccine can work for humans. So definitely these were tested on mice, like mouse models, and it was finally tested on monkeys. So these are called as preclinical trials. So before anything comes to human for clinical trials, they always go through these small phases, and they are called as preclinical trials, where animals like mouse, and then if the studies are successful in mouse, the next phase is going to macaques, like, or macaques, I don't know how you pronounce it, basically monkeys. And then it comes to human. So maybe when you are making a choice on whether to go for it or not go for it, maybe keep that thing in mind.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. We're getting some questions now, but before we get there, I want to ask another question, and then maybe we can open it up. And I remember you had shared in one of the strategic planning meetings, you had shared a very nice video about the spread of virus and the difference between the flu and the virus. If you have that handy, we can take a look at that video as well towards the end. Do you have that handy?
I don't have it, but I can find it out, Govindpriya. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
All right. I thought that was a brilliant video, and it was very like in a lame language, very informative. I was, yeah, Acharya Prabhu saying that God Mohan Dev was willing to feed chicken soup to his infant son Abhay to save him from typhoid. Yeah, and by Krishna's mercy, we're not in that situation. To that have to take any. And now it's quite relieving to hear that these vaccines are vegetarian per se, according to even vegan. Um, so my question here is that we hear that, oh, you're getting the disease, you're going to get, if you get COVID-19, you have some sort of link. Like we had an interview with I saw on the GBC SPT platform with Ganga, who is having so many symptoms even after months of contracting COVID-19. And then we have we had His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj that we have lost because of contraction of COVID-19. So we see the effect of COVID-19. But at the same time, I've also heard that the vaccination has had side effects. So it's like, you naturally get the disease and you contract some infection, or you're taking a vaccination and you're unnecessarily forcing some sort of side effects on yourself. So do you have any information about what kind of side effects the vaccines are causing? What sort of clinical trials were done on who, old people, children, or people with medical conditions, who should really watch out, or any sort of that information if you have any?
Yeah, thank you, Govind Priya. So I really love the way you framed the question. Like, we see effects on both sides. We are losing our devotees and we are losing our family members and our brothers and sisters to COVID. And at the same time, we are seeing people having side effects. So which effect should we choose? So it's a very valid question. I really like it. Thank you so much for putting it that way. A beautiful insight. So actually, I would start it by saying that nothing in this material world is safe. Like, as devotees, we know, right? Padam padam yad viptam natesham, as Bhagavatam says, right? So boarding an airplane, like how many times we have gone into the cockpit and checked the degrees like the pilot has, or how many flight hours he has under his belt, or if the fuel is there in the airplane, we don't know, right? We just have that trust, right? So we just go. And even driving in a car, like we are going to the work, actually it's said that airplanes are the most safest. There are more accidents on the road these days than airplane accidents, so going for skiing or hiking or even sitting in roller coaster rides, I've seen so many cases where like like this is all new for me because I'm from India, like these roller coaster things. Like, I've heard that some string breaks and like people die and they like just, I don't know, I mean, I've heard about that, like in Disney, and the Disney was closed, stuff like that, so bungee jumping and go-karting, everything has a risk, right? In life, we are living this life in this material world, everything is risky. Like river rafting, people are so fond of river rafting, it's so risky. So anyway, so similarly, I would say any pharmaceutical product, like just not the vaccines, even the drugs, like they do have side effects. Like, nothing is like perfect and nothing is completely risk free, I would say. Even WHO acknowledges that. So it's not that they are hiding something. So even WHO says that there is nothing called as perfect vaccine, which will protect everyone who will receive it, and it's entirely safe for everyone. That is WHO's statement. I just paraphrased it a little bit. There is nothing called as perfect vaccine. So regarding side effects, I would say that success of a vaccine should be evaluated as exactly how you put it, that what is the risk factors, that when I get the vaccine, what are the side effects that I'm going to have, versus if I not take the vaccine, what could happen to me, right? So if we evaluate the benefits and the side effects, we can see, like we can make a choice whether I want a vaccine or not. So having said that, the only side effects that these vaccine actually, so before I go into the side effects that you are talking about, Govind Priya, I just want to make sure we all come to the same page of knowing that how side effects are reported actually. So what is a side effect? Like when we take a vaccine, there is any untoward medical occurrence. So I took the vaccine, anything other that happened in my body after I have taken the vaccination is called as side effect, right? And side effect is classified in 3 different categories. It's like mild, moderate, and severe. So mild side effects are like basically low-grade fever, you have local pain, redness and swelling at the injection site, or little fatigue. These are mild symptoms. Moderate symptoms would include like pain and swelling, not just at the injection site, but it has spread to the local joints also in that area, in that vicinity. And you develop high-grade fever because of that. And major or severe sometimes requires like hospitalization, or sometimes can lead to death or disability also. But having said that, I really want all of us to know that this may not be necessarily because of the vaccine. So there are 5 different factors that come into play when we talk about side effects. So CDC and FDA, they have started an organization. It is called as VAERS. It is Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, VAERS, and it was started in 1990. And it allows anybody, like if I take the vaccine today, it gives me the opportunity to put how I felt after getting the vaccine. So basically anybody can report what they felt after getting the vaccine into this particular system, or it's VSafe is an app actually, so you can put that. So but that doesn't mean that whatever events somebody is putting is because of vaccination. The CDC actually has another team that investigates that the event, what the event was, like what was the side effect, and then they try to find out if it was in fact caused by vaccination or not. And then CDC had come up with 5 different factors where people are seeing side effects but may not be vaccine related. So the 5 categories or the 5 factors are like, the first one is vaccine related. So this is direct, right? I took the vaccine and it's vaccine related. So because there was some component in the vaccine that my body reacted to and I got the side effect. So this is direct effect of vaccine. So it's likely, it's very possible. I'm not denying the fact, it's possible. Second is vaccine quality defect related. So when vaccine is safe, the components are safe, but just because of the manufacturing defect, so vaccine is also produced, right? The doses are produced in a factory, I would say, or a manufacturing plant. So then if there is a defect in the production of the vaccine, it can lead to a poor quality vaccine. So there is nothing wrong with the vaccine per se, but it's the quality that was defective, right? So something like if we go to the grocery store and buy apples, right? So there's nothing inherently wrong with the apples, but the batch that I bought, and it actually, I think, happened in California also, that a particular batch was like not very good for Moderna. I think so that happened. So the batch of apples that I got was infected or was not very good. It's possible, right? So that is vaccine quality related. So one is vaccine related, second is vaccine quality related. The third one is immunization error related. So errors, right? Sometimes it's basically human error, right? The nurses or the practitioners, they are not very careful, they're lousy, they have not handled or stored the vaccine properly, they have not sterilized the needles properly. What was supposed to be use and throw, they are reusing it, and generally that happens in developing countries more than developed countries. And also sometimes they ignore the contradictions, right? As Bhavani Devi Prabhu was saying, that some people have underlying conditions. So if the doctor ignores those contraindications, that person has past history of allergy or person is immunocompromised, and the medical practitioner just administers the vaccine, that could lead to side effects, right? So it's not vaccine related, it's immunization error related.
Right.
Then the fourth one is anxiety related reactions. And I am the best candidate for that. I need 5 people to surround me when I'm going to get vaccination. Like my sister is also on the call, Shama Sakhi Devi, and she can vouch for that. I have super anxieties about, so it's actually needle phobia. It's called as trypanophobia, where people have severe fear of needles or any medical procedures. And I am one of them. So I have like fainting spells, or I puke, like I get so many things. So if somebody says, oh, I have nausea after vaccination, okay, vaccination was fine, right? It's my psychological. So others may be physiological, but I am more psychological, so I can have reactions because of that. So that is the fourth category. And the fifth one, which is the most common one, is coincidental or unknown events. So coincidental, as the word says, right? The coincidence means basically occurrence of 2 or more events at the same time, right? So somebody was bitten by a mosquito and have malaria and have high fever, and at the same time the person gets the vaccine. So they may say, oh, I'm getting high fever because of vaccine. No, because you don't know you have malaria also, right, in the background. So there are some events that happen at the same time, and it's just a coincidence that you have taken the vaccine at the same time. So the preceding event in that coincidence has nothing causally related to the next one, right? So one is not related to the second one. So that is called as coincidental or unknown event. So these 5 categories, the side effects can range, like why somebody can have side effects is because of one of those 5 things, right? And then effective vaccines, actually it's very normal that when we get vaccination, body is recognizing that something new has come in my system, right? So it's very natural for the body to respond or react. So if somebody is having fever or pain or fatigue or chills, like when I took the vaccine personally, I was sick for 2 days. Like I can say I had high fever. So I would say my symptoms were moderate, not mild. So I had fever. I also had joint pain. And also like I had chills and I had to take Tylenol for 3 days. And one day I had to skip work also. So I was quite sick, I would say, when I took the vaccine. But then after that, it went away. So it's natural response of the body when we get any foreign thing in our system, right? So what I would say, because the other question that you asked, Govindpriya, about the clinical trials, like what kind of people were included in the trials, like breastfeeding women, pregnant women, children, older people with underlying conditions, I would say no. So the trials didn't happen on those people. So for Pfizer, the trials were 16 years to 65 years. That kind of population was included, and that did not have women and children. And for Moderna, it was 18 years to 65 years, and again, did not have pregnant women, breastfeeding women, immunocompromised people, or like very old people, like in 80s and 90s. They didn't have that. So I would say that if somebody has past history of allergies or any allergy to any injectable substance or ingestible substance, like I would suggest that they should just talk to their doctor, especially if somebody's pregnant or breastfeeding or expecting um, like or having some underlying condition. I would suggest that these are contraindications and we should go to a doctor and check. And I was just thinking while I'm just saying all this, like about the side effects, like I was thinking, okay, we are talking so much about the side effects of the medicines. What about the side effects of technology, like the gadgets and the iPhones? Okay, one side effect is on our body, right? Medicine can show side effects on our body, but these gadgets and technology show the effect on our mind, right? So they lead to so many mental problems like depression and anxiety, and people are like so hooked up with their devices, they lose their relationships. So but we still do not refrain from using that technology. Like how many of us, so I was hearing one lecture, actually, Nitai Sevni, like she's very good speaker. She was saying that on our calendars, we should have a fasting day from iPhones, like fasting on Ekadashi or fasting till noon. So she said fasting till noon from iPhone. And I'm like, ah, yeah, really, actually, the first thing I take is in the morning is iPhones, you know? So we don't refrain from using that technology, even though it has side effects on our mind, right? So similarly, we have to use whatever is available to us in this world while we are going through our life, whether it is medicine or technology, but we use our intelligence, we use knowledge, and we use discretion to choose how we want to use them. So the things are there. It's our choice how we use it. And Prabhupada always said that health comes first, then sadhana comes, and then seva comes. Because if we are not well, our sadhana is disrupted. And if our sadhana is disrupted, our bodies are disrupted, we cannot even share Krishna consciousness with others, right? So health is the most important thing. So everything begins with good health. So when Prabhupada would always say, right, don't surrender your intelligence, surrender with intelligence. So with this presentation, I hope like some facts must be cleared. I'm sure there may be many doubts, but you can always write to me or Govind Priya, and we can like open up for questions. It's already been an hour. I'm talking on and on and on.
Thank you so much, Shamagopi. And I see that there's a lot of links, and Acharya Prabhu has been posting a lot of things here. If there's any of the chat or the links that you want to, save for later, please do that right now, because as soon as we log out of Zoom, the chat and the messages are lost.
Can
So
someone then put the, I don't see them, Govind Priya, and I'm very bad in technology, although I use my iPhone, but still, so how do I see like,
So you should be able to see messages down chat. Do you see any chat going on down there?
is that more like, oh, yeah. Okay, more, there's a chat option. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of chats, and So we do have some questions. Maybe we can take a few questions. Victoria, how are we doing on Facebook? Is there anything coming up on Facebook?
Yeah, we have one question from Nitya Mukta, who says, I know one devotee took the vaccine and he had a lot of side effects, so is it safe? I think we've answered that in the past couple of minutes. We have, it looks like Humbly Yours has a question and has raised her hand, so maybe we can.
Shraddhanjali Prabhu had a question as well, so maybe we can take a couple questions, and if in the meanwhile Shama Gopi can find that video, we can
Okay,
share.
sure. I just want to share, I really like Humbly Yours 178 this question.
Yeah,
We need a
thank you.
lockbox.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Shamagopi. Thank you for a very wonderful, a knowledgeable presentation. When I saw the yesterday's topic, no COVID, I did not think like, wow, this happens in ISKCON, like people are educating, like, from the medicine, from the world of medicine, people are educating other devotees. And I thought like, this is like a very fast forward organization and not like stuck in 5,000 years ago. Like I felt like the topic itself was very refreshing for any ISKCON devotee. So I jumped into this Tiffany Mataji from ISKCON Pennsylvania, like she kind of informed me about this event. Thank you so much. And it's very informative and very knowledgeable and very thorough. And the coordinator also did a very great job, Govinda Priya Didi Mataji. So thank you both so much. It's really like I'm very happy to be in this call. Just a quick question: between the two vaccines, which one is more has more efficacy?
Between Pfizer and Moderna, are you asking?
Yeah, between the two.
Yeah, one is 95%, one is 94%, but that really doesn't make any difference. And both of and anything that is available to you right now, we don't have a choice, right? So
Right.
if you opt for vaccine, then go for either of the two. Like I know a couple of people who have taken Moderna also, but in Illinois where I live, mostly it's Pfizer.
Oh,
So,
okay.
But I don't see any difference between, I have the data for both of them, Pfizer and Moderna, and both of them look pretty safe to me. And I'm sorry to hear about Nitya Mukta Devi, some devotee who had side effects. So I hope she feels well. And
Someone she knows had side effects.
or someone she knows that had side effects. Okay.
Now, from your presentation, I'm thinking about the 5 reasons why there could be side
Could be,
effects.
yeah.
Yeah, I have one more follow-up question on the numbers that are reported by WHO and Johns Hopkins University. How reliable are these numbers? Because none of these hospital systems were built for reporting these COVID deaths, and most of these deaths, they could be happening due to various other reasons, and COVID could have accentuated the death, but it is still reported as a COVID death as opposed to any other underlying condition. So how reliable are these numbers? And this was not at all predicted. So these were all like everyone jumped into the bus, and like we were like forced to report the numbers. So how accurate are these numbers? And if you look at other countries, like WHO is reporting from different countries of the world. I can clearly tell you the India numbers. There's so much bureaucracy, so much layers and layers of what is reported, what is actual. There's so much discrepancy, and I believe even that happens within the US too. So how reliable are these numbers?
Yeah, so this is again a personal question, and there are a lot of conspiracy theories about WHO, CDC, that there is some agenda involved in vaccines. So I totally agree with what you are saying. How reliable they would be is a very valid question. As a scientist, I have to believe somewhere. Like I have to believe at something. Like otherwise, it's very hard to function, right, in the world. So it's very, very hard to function if we completely not believe in anything. It's very hard to function. So what I would say is like, I do believe WHO and CDC, what they are reporting, definitely there could be like how we do census, right? In India, we used to do, people would come to your house and take recording, how many people live in your house. Then some houses, there is nobody, they ring the bell, but people don't open. So they miss that house,
Right.
So when you are doing, it's called as an epidemiological study. So when you do these kind of things, there's always a chance cases are underreported or even overreported. So some people didn't contract COVID, but they were immunocompromised. That is why they contracted COVID, So how they became COVID patient and how many cases, it's totally like, I mean, whether it is 110 million or 200 million, it just doesn't matter. Like, I mean, that's just my understanding. Like if it is 110 million or 120 million and their stats are off by 10-20%, I would say that in a global population, it's very possible that it's happening, right? So
Right.
um,
One last question. Is there any silver lining that we all have learned, the world has learned from this virus? Are we better prepared for the next pandemic? Are the systems in place? And from the medicine point of view, can you throw some light? Because we all will feel good about it. Okay, first time it didn't go well as planned, but we got the best outcomes. Like in 1.5 years, we are ready to get vaccines, and that still is a miracle considering like the how fast the vaccines can get produced, and the world was not prepared for this, right? So how do you think like we can learn lessons from this, and how do you predict the future for the next epidemic?
yeah. So, Mataji, I'm not very sure about that, how it would look, because virus is mutating, right? And currently, it's very premature to say how our vaccines would respond to these mutated viruses. So maybe it's possible that every year we can have a COVID shot, like the way we have flu shot, right? And also, as you asked, right, like, is our medical system in place? So I don't know much about the hospitals where I work. It's doing pretty good because now they're experienced. Like, so if we have to start somewhere, right? And experience is that only, that when we experience something, then we grow from it. So I would say that where I work in that particular hospital, we are really doing pretty good. We have like secured a lot of doses, and we are even doing phase 1B where we are trying to immunize people who are 65 plus. So, and also the technology for the vaccine for Pfizer and Moderna is like a new technology where they use mRNA, and mRNA is very easy to change. So if you see that there's a mutation in a particular amino acid, you just go to your computer. It's literally easy. I can do it right now while I'm doing a Zoom call with you. I just go to the system and just change like, so amino acid alanine. I don't know if how much you are familiar with these names, alanine, asparagine,
That
glutamine, anything. So you just change that sequence and you have a new vaccine.
yeah. I have some exposure to bioinformatics, and I know the 20 protein amino acids. And my daughter is in pre-med, so I do co-study with her, and I'm like a biology major, so I have some idea what you're talking about.
Correct. So you can just change the codons, basically 3 codons code for one amino acid. So you can just go and change the codon. Codon is nothing but a DNA sequence, right?
Right, right.
ATGC. So you just change it and the amino acid is changed. And then you have a new vaccine for the new virus. So I think the medical system should be doing like really good. And I don't think it would be as catastrophic as it was this time. That's just my understanding, but it's just my understanding. I am not seeing it from the global perspective, financially, politically. I have no idea. I'm just a small researcher in a small lab.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all these brilliant questions and your brilliant answers, and humility is really, really touching. I think Acharya Prabhu is very actively posting valuable links and sharing valuable information. So again, I'm mentioning if you want to capture anything from the chat, do it now, save it. There's 3 dots near your message, where you can click that, and there's an option to save the chat. That will save the chat in your, on your computer or your device. I think Shraddhanjali Prabhu had another question, and a very practical question, I think. And if anyone else, I'm opening this up to anyone else. If you have any last minute thoughts, any questions, any comments, please unmute yourself and you can speak. And then maybe we can watch that short video that you had.
Could I ask a question related?
Absolutely.
Okay. These vaccines have to be kept in a particular condition, like the Pfizer one was minus 70 degrees Celsius, I believe. And I know now that that's not possible to do in regular hospitals and things like that. I just feel that maybe a high proportion of these vaccines are given when they have not been kept in these optimum conditions. Do they actually reduce in efficiency, or is there something that happens to them that could be adverse to the body?
Thank you, Bhavani Prabhu. It's such an intelligent question. Thank you. So basically the vaccine, the Pfizer that you were talking about, and also Moderna, both of them need ultra temperatures for storage. And because their fundamental or the biology by which they work is through mRNA, which is messenger RNA, it's a very short lifespan. That particular molecule lives very short life. Something like a mayfly lives only 24 hours, for example. So this particular molecule, which is called as messenger RNA, has a very short lifespan. So if you change the temperature a little bit here and there, it degrades. Degrades means like it breaks down. So once this messenger RNA molecule is broken down, basically what all we left with is lipids and salt and sugar. So the not just the efficacy, basically we won't get any protection like from the vaccine. So it completely destroys the purpose of getting a vaccine. So that is why Pfizer and Moderna are not the best options for countries like India or like other countries where you need so much of equipment and facility to store the vaccine. That's why they are mostly opting for AstraZeneca, Covishield, or Covaxin, or Johnson and Johnson is coming up with the new vaccine actually. So uh, these are different vaccines, work on different methodology. They work on DNA, and DNA is very stable. So even if you store it at room temperature, like I work with DNA, even if I leave it on my bench and come back tomorrow, nothing happens. But I can't leave messenger RNA on my table and go. So just that thing, because they function on that particular molecule. So that is very important to keep its integrity and keep it intact.
So realistically, the figures that of people being vaccinated, I mean, this is really, I understand we have to have faith, and I understand we can only go so far in trying to find things out for ourselves, and then we make a decision. But theoretically, any numbers that are given out of the vaccinations that have taken place, there should be some rule there of a percentage of failure. I don't know if there is anything like that, and whether that's taken into effect when they're actually making these numbers. But you can see realistically, numbers can only be used actually, basically, they can't be seen as a total truth, because we don't know what percentage of these vaccines are actually effective if they have not been kept at the optimum level. I mean, as you say, they're getting sugar and lipids and nothing else, right? Yeah. So is that asking a lot? Are there anybody recording this sort of, I'm not going to call it a failure level, but that's what, really hasn't worked sort of thing.
So Bhavani Devi Prabhu, when they say that the vaccine has to be stored at ultra temperature, it means they have done that research that if you don't store it at ultra temperature, it won't work. So that is how they came up with this idea that it needs that much of temperature for storage, right? So when we say that vaccine is 95% effective or 94% effective or only 70% effective, it means that out of 100 people, 95 people were protected when they took the vaccine. So that is what efficacy means when we hear these numbers. It's 95% protective. It means if there is a population of 100 people, 95 out of them would be protected. And for FDA to approve any vaccine, it has to be just above 50%. And for comparison, I would just want to make this point that flu vaccine that we take every year is only 40 to 60% effective. So Pfizer and Moderna are pretty effective, saying they are 95%. But about the temperature, when we say that this will work at this temperature, it means they have already done the research that it won't work at lower or even higher temperature. That's the optimal temperature at it will work. So this research has already been done.
I wasn't thinking of the research that you've just said. Thank you very much for giving us that information. It was more of a tongue-in-cheek question, really, about how can we actually state that this amount of people have been vaccinated when 40% of them got nothing but lipids and sugar. It was just something in my mind. I can see it's not measurable, but it was just something I wanted to put out there, that's all. I don't want to instill fear in people, and I myself will make a decision based on the information that I've got. And I wanted to come into this program because you have already been vetted as being for us to be able to take information from you and to trust that information. So
I'm very happy. You can write to me, like my email, I can share on the chat box. Like it's
okay. Thank you.
I think Acharya Prabhu has shared a few things that, in certain parts, certain countries, it's a little more, the standards have been maintained very diligently. And in certain parts, that's why, like Shamagopi was mentioning, that in some developing countries, they're opting for other options other than the ones that need a little more handling care. So that it's easier to manage. But I think in the United States and and developed countries, we do have more resources and facilities to handle such vaccines. Yeah, but definitely Shamagopi is the person you want to reach out to if you have any questions. And I think she just posted her. Yes.
Email, yes. And if I
Anything
don't
else?
know anything, I'll definitely share resources with you. So it's not that I know everything, but I'll share some either contact of someone else who is more knowledgeable than me. I know definitely 10 more devotees who are actively working in the field, and some of them are even in Pfizer, and they were a part of vaccine development. So they know how the vaccine was developed. So I would definitely love to share other resources for all of you in case you wanna check that out.
Sure.
Hare Krishna.
I think we have Mitravinda Prabhu has a question.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm really happy that this this level of communication is happening for. I mean, I see some male bodies are in the chat, perhaps, but I'm happy that the Vaishnavi Sangha is presenting this information for several reasons. I want to, before I get started, thank Victoria Johnny for inviting me to this. Thank you, darling love. I appreciate you so much. So I apologize for coming on late. I couldn't get in, but thank you for being here, doctor. And I'm not sure if the questions I'm about to ask have already been presented. If they have already been presented, please, forgive my redundancy. One of my questions, in regards to Vaishnavis in this Vaishnavi Sangha is, as we are jivas with female bodies, which allows specific ways of serving, which include carrying jivas who are housed in bodies in our bodies that grow. There has not, to my knowledge, been a lot of, let's say, overall, the vaccines are very new. They are very experimental in nature. And one of my overall concerns is 20 years from now, 15 years from now, 2 years from now, there's no way to understand the effects of the vaccines on anyone. And that pretty much makes everyone who takes it a guinea pig. But in regards to carrying and bringing Krishna's gifts, jivas, to this material platform as devotees with female bodies, what information do you have on potentially how it can affect fetuses in the long term? The teenagers who may be taking it, the women who have not had children yet but are of childbearing age. And the other question is regarding the contents of the vaccine being deemed toxic, and how is that relatable to its use and the outcome prospectively going forward for anyone who takes it, as well as there's some disagreement with whether or not the fetuses or DNA of aborted fetuses is in there. Is it contained in the vaccine as well?
Mitravinda Prabhu, thank you so much. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Thank you for joining. I'm very happy to have you on this call. Thank you for coming. So you asked me a couple of questions, which I'm trying to make notes of. So first thing you asked about the side effects, like long-term side effects, correct? Like that is what your question is, that it's too early for us to say because the vaccines have just come out. We don't know. And you are right, like generally the clinical trials last for 5 years. And only after 5 years of extensive immunization, we can come up with the comprehensive data that the vaccine is actually very safe. So you're right in one way that we don't know exactly how people would respond to these vaccines 2 years down the line, forget about 15 or 20. At the same time, we also don't know what long-lasting effects COVID infection will have on us. So I have seen so many people who had contracted COVID virus and they are having long-term effects, So as I said while I was talking, I said that we have to evaluate the benefits versus the side effects. So, and based on that, we make a choice whether we want a vaccine or not. And you are absolutely right. It'll take some time for us to know that vaccines are actually completely safe for all the demographics that you have mentioned, because yes, the vaccine was not tested on pregnant women. It was not tested on teenagers. It was not tested on older people. It was not tested on people who were having compromised immunity or underlying medical conditions. So we don't know how do they respond. But one thing that I heard you saying that women who are in childbearing age, basically. So I will go back and look at that, because definitely they were in that 16 to 35, 16 to 65, right? So I haven't looked at that data very closely, that what is that particular age group, how did that particular age group responded. So if you want, you can write to me or share your email with you. I can send you an email with that after I look into that data. So I don't want to comment on that exactly, because I don't know it. And then about, I heard you talking about the vaccine ingredients. So I think my sister has shared a couple of links over here. I have written 2 articles that address your question about vaccine ingredients, and specifically the concern about vaccines having tissues from aborted fetuses, which is a very valid concern. Like, many people have that. So if you want to get an understanding, maybe you can look at that article, and you can always write to me. I mean, I don't know how much time do we have. I can go into that in detail, but it'll take me like some time, and I don't know the schedule for all of you. So Govind Priya, please correct me, like, I'm not sure.
No, thank you so much. I see the links there. So I hear that, there's Johnson, so many different pharmaceutical companies are coming up with different vaccines. And I heard Johnson and Johnson being mentioned.
Yes.
I tend to be optimistic as a natural propensity. But Johnson and Johnson just had some major issues with baby powder, for example, containing highly toxic chemicals, which women were getting ovarian cancer from. So I have a pretty skeptical mood now about, publicly, this is known, this is information. Not a lot of people maybe have heard of it, but it's facts. So I have, understandably some concern with their integrity.
Absolutely, Mr. Vinda, definitely. So if you go through these articles, maybe at least your fetal thing will be addressed, because the vaccines actually do not contain anything from aborted fetuses. So you can go back and look, and this talcum powder thing from Johnson & Johnson is also new for me. I've never heard. Maybe I'm not in that category right now where I'm looking for baby products or something like that, but totally I understand what you are saying. These artificial things are not natural to our body, and you say you are a proponent of like naturopathy and everything, which is great. Like, so definitely we have to make educated decisions and see what is best for us. So it's your personal choice.
So there is no information on aborted feces being a part of the vaccine's contents. I actually saw something, I forget the proper chemical definition.
Yeah, they're basically, so there is a difference between fetal cell line and there's a difference between fetal tissue. So a lot of people get mixed up with that. So the vaccines were tested on the cells that were isolated from fetuses in 1972, actually, and they were not aborted because somebody wants to abort them for medical or vaccine development. They were elective legal termination of pregnancies that happened in Netherlands in 1972. And from the fetuses, they isolated some cells, and those cells have grown over decades and decades. It's been like almost 3 decades. These cells have been growing. They have been genetically, not, I won't use that word because it can again cause alarm, like genetically, I would say they're modified in the lab so that they can grow eternally. So basically these cells are growing for 3 decades. They have been growing. So there is no connection between the fetus from where the cells were isolated and what the cells are today. They are completely different cell. They are called as immortalized cell lines. And vaccine, not the Pfizer and Moderna though, but AstraZeneca Covishield was tested on these cells. So that is why people get mixed up with that. Okay, they have, and we don't need any ongoing abortions for vaccine development. We don't need any fetal tissue to be put into the vaccines. That's not true, actually. There is no fetal tissue in any of the vaccines. So you can look at those articles and see if that answers your question. Otherwise, I'm open to communication through email. So.
Thank you. So I really appreciate your mood. I appreciate, the way that you give complete information and from your heart. And as you know, devotee, Vaishnava, I see that your mood is to help us understand better, to make a better decision. And I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Shaima Gopi.
Thank you so much for being here with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mitra Vindra Prabhu. I think there's one last question maybe we can take. We have to 1:30. And it's been really a lot of learning for me, and I'm sure many others feel the same. So again, save the chat if you want to get any of those links. I personally read those articles written by Shamagopi along with her sister Shamasaki and another devotee together. Brilliant and so informative. Please take a look at those articles. They really explain that cell line and all of that really in detail with diagrams. And so I see that there was a question by Sarvani Prabhu on Facebook. Now I'm not able to find that. Give me a second.
I can read it for you if you want.
Victoria.
Some think that the vaccine will change their DNA. Can you speak to this fear that some may have?
Sorry, what is, I didn't hear actually. I was looking, sorry, but
Sure.
I missed the last part of your question.
Sure. Some think that the vaccine will change their DNA. Can you speak about this fear that they have?
Okay. So yeah, definitely. So is it okay, Govindpriya? How long can we go?
Yeah, please go ahead. Let's
Go ahead.
answer these questions. And,
Okay.
the whole idea was to get questions answered.
The questions. Okay,
Glad
sure.
that
Yeah.
this is
It's a
helpful.
very valid concern. If DNA, they can alter our DNA, we will live with some eternal genetic disorder because they will modify us. We'll become a new person. So tomorrow when we wake up, so these kind of things are there, which are totally valid. Let me see if I can share my screen so I can share this like a kind of little diagram. But if people are on Facebook, can they see, Govindpriya? Like, is this
Yeah,
question?
they will be able to see.
They
your
will be able to
screen
see.
sharing.
Okay.
Tiffany and Victoria, can you please give a rights to share screen? Is this possible?
I already did. She has it.
Okay, thank you. Victoria and Tiffany, you're doing great. Thank you so much for facilitating this. Just a second. All participants, who can start sharing when someone else is sharing?
I think you can share.
Okay, is my,
I'm not able to share for maybe your host. So
who can share?
is Shamagopi host? Tiffany?
Shamagopi is, if you can't, if you want to send it to me, if you can't figure out how to share it, I can share for you.
Okay, let me do that. Like, can you see my screen? No, right?
Not yet.
Okay.
So I'm sure she can figure it out, but I don't have rights. Okay, I have rights to share too now.
Oh, maybe then I do have to.
Yeah,
I do have now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me share the
Yeah,
screen.
we can see now. Perfect.
Yeah, just a second. So COVID-19. So you all can see, right, my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the name of this devotee who asked this question? I want to address her.
I think it's Sarvani Prabhu. Is that right, Victoria?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Sarvani, can you see this picture here? Like,
Well,
right
she's
here?
on Facebook, so I'm not sure, but go ahead.
Okay, so if you see this little picture over here, it could be a little technical, but I would try to do my best, like in simple words. So you can see over here, like how the mRNA vaccines work, basically. I have a similar schematic for DNA vaccine too, but for now, let's talk about just Pfizer and Moderna, which are based on messenger RNA technology. So you can see over here on the top, like a square, a rectangle kind of thing, and there is a circular blue with double membrane. It's called as nucleus. And this is cytoplasm, which like is a common thing we all know from our school textbook. So every cell, so this rectangle represents a cell, and we have a nucleus in a cell, and we also have extranuclear region, which is outside of the nucleus, which is called as cytoplasm. So what happens generally, how the proteins are made in our body, because ultimately every function that is carried out by us in our body is via protein. So protein is the most important molecule that is required for any function in our body. So if you see here a spiral kind of red thing, Govindpriya, can you also see my cursor when I'm moving it?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So this little red spiral thing inside the nucleus that represents DNA because it's double stranded and it's like anti-parallel. So what happens is this DNA actually gets converted into messenger RNA. So DNA by itself cannot make proteins in our body. Why? The information is there in the DNA to make proteins, but it cannot make proteins because the machinery to make proteins in our body resides in cytoplasm, not in the nucleus. And DNA is the molecule that carries the blueprint, the genetic code, and everything that is there in our body is carried in this little red molecule. But it cannot function by itself at all. So what happens is it's like a messenger, like how Prabhupada would say, right? I'm just a messenger. So he just transfers the information, right? So what happens, this little messenger RNA molecule, this green one, it copies the information from the DNA as it is. And this messenger RNA has a quality or a characteristic that it can go outside of the nucleus. So this first process is called as copying, which is called as transcription in the biological term. This process of copying is called as transcription. Once this messenger RNA is made inside the nucleus that carries the information, it goes out. So you can see this arrow, this messenger RNA is going outside. And in the cytoplasm, there is machinery for making proteins. So you can see that messenger RNA is converted into proteins. And this process is called as translation. So transcription and translation. So the protein is made in the cytosol, right? So what happens is this messenger RNA molecule, right after it makes the proteins, as I said to Bhavani Devi Prabhu's question, that it's very short-lived molecule. So there are little like scissor-like enzymes in our body, which are called as ribonucleases. And they cleave this RNA into small pieces. So basically this mRNA doesn't even stay in our body for a long time. Once it does its job, it's degraded. Now, the question is that you are asking that whether these vaccines can alter our DNA or not, right? So let's look at the bottom panel over here, like this little cell. So what happens when we get vaccinated? So whether it is Pfizer or whether it is Moderna, they inject this, they have mimicked this whole virus. So you see on the left-hand side, this is a virion. Virion means a viral particle. So this circle is there. And there is DNA, like, so this virus is RNA actually. So this virus doesn't have DNA. I don't want to confuse you. Let's say just genetic material, right? It has this. And it has spike proteins over here. You can see these crown-like structures in green, fluorescent. They're called as spike protein. And this is whole viral genome. So what these companies have done, they have mimicked this virion particle. So you can see they have made here a little blue thing, which is the nanoparticle made up of lipids or fat. And they have encapsulated that lipid nanoparticle with the viral RNA that encodes for the spike protein. So they didn't take the entire RNA of the virus. They only took a little piece from that virus that codes for spike protein. So they have this as a little viral particle. So it basically mimics the virus, right? And when they inject it, you see over here, like this is the injection that's showing that this vaccine is injected in our body. So what happens, this mRNA is there. So this actually escapes this whole process of DNA to RNA to proteins. They are directly injecting messenger RNA into our body. So now you have this fluorescent messenger RNA that will use the host or our body's machinery to make viral spike protein. So you can see over here, this green protein is different than this pink protein, right? Because this is a foreign protein. So this is the spike protein. That is the protein over here on viral surface, right? And when our body sees this spike, this green protein, it will start to make antibodies, and that's how we get protection. Now, coming to your question that whether this messenger RNA vaccine can alter our DNA. So you can see over here, firstly, this messenger RNA is delivered into the cytoplasm, right? It has nothing to do with the nucleus where our DNA resides. You see how far it is. So they're spatially separated. And messenger RNA has no ability to go back into the nucleus. So it can come out of the nucleus, but in order for messenger RNA to go back into the nucleus, it has to undergo 2 steps. So you can see over here on the left, this messenger RNA has to be converted into DNA first in the cytoplasm. And then after it is converted to DNA, it has to go inside the nucleus and then integrate into our DNA or incorporate into our DNA. And that's how it can change our genetic code. But here, the enzyme that is responsible for converting this messenger RNA into DNA and putting this DNA back into the nucleus, there are 2 enzymes required, reverse transcriptase and integrase. And our body does not have these 2 enzymes. So there is no way this messenger RNA that is given to us through these vaccines can ever be converted into DNA, and it can never be again translocated into the nucleus to combine with DNA, because these two enzymes Krishna has not made smartly in our bodies. So we don't have these enzymes in our bodies. So this vaccine is pretty safe. So this is a myth, I would say. It's a rumor that these vaccines can actually, I can say very strongly about it, because fundamentally, scientifically, logically, from the basics of biochemistry, this is not possible. Like one thing, if I can say strongly for in this whole presentation is this, that this vaccine will never ever change our DNA. It cannot even touch our DNA because it is, or everything is happening in cytoplasm. So you see how geographically they are separated. And even if they have to go in, there are no enzymes that will lead to their translocation. So that will never happen. So at least from that side, we can be safe. Like we can be rest assured that nothing will happen to our DNA. It'll be safe.
We need one more session from you next month, Mataji. This is not enough.
Thank you so much. This was so brilliantly explained. I mean, even though I don't understand any of these terms, I understood that, and I feel confident enough that, this does not. So any last minute comments? I know you're receiving a lot of appreciation from our Facebook. Victoria, do you want to read something out just so that we encourage Shamagopi a little bit? And she's still willing to do sessions for us. I know many devotees from on the chat here itself have been appreciating your presentation. And so many devotees.
Question. One question. So after getting the vaccine, do we still have to wear the mask and all that stuff?
Yeah, because new strains are coming up, so we have to gear up. So yes, definitely we have to keep wearing masks because new strains are there, right? And we don't know people whom we are coming in contact with, if they have COVID firstly, and what strain do they have, right? So we don't want to get infected with new strains. So please keep continuing taking precautions, and I really wish all of you a very healthy 2021.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I see there's some more comments. Again, if you need to save the chat, do it now before we log out of Zoom, because there's no way to retrieve that. Thank you so much, Shamagopi, for your valuable time and bringing everything that you've researched, your years and years of study to us, encapsulated in just an hour, that we can make some educated decisions. And once again, from the Vaishnavi Ministry, we are your support team. We're just trying to help devotees in every possible different aspects of their life. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for your active participation and for encouraging us. So thank you very much.
I'm very grateful to you all for giving me this opportunity to serve. It's like you guys made my Saturday. So thank you so much. Like I would love to being with all of you. Thank you so much. And if there is any discrepancy, please forgive me, because I'm also learning, as if the whole world is learning about COVID. So please forgive me if there is any discrepancy. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
Priya and your team is wonderful. It's amazing. Like thank
It
you.
is absolutely wonderful. We have Tiffany, we have Victoria, we have Carly. So many wonderful young Vaishnavis are coming forward to support the ministry. So it's just, we're able to bring whatever, and devotees like you, who are accomplished and in their own fields are sharing these this knowledge. I saw dots and I went in dots, but yeah, if you want to save your chat, just right where you type your message, you'll see 3 dots. If you click on that, it gives you an option to save the chat. There's a lot of articles. I've personally read Shamagopi's article and I've seen her work on those. She's put in days and days of hard work along with her sister Shamasaki and another devotee. So please take advantage, and she's very generously sharing her email here as well. So reach out to her, and yeah, everyone, please take care. Have a safe 2021 and life ahead, and so that we can actively serve together Srila Prabhupada's movement. So thank you again, once again, everyone, for your association.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If anyone, thank you. If anyone in the audience would like to share their subject matter expertise, like how Ms. Shamagopi Mataji did today, based upon their subject matter expertise, like organic agriculture or things like that. So who shall I contact?
Please write to the Vaishnavi Ministry. Can Tiffany or Victoria please drop
Oh,
an email?
Tiffany. Okay, I know Tiffany because she's from Philadelphia, so I'll contact her.
Absolutely. You can write to the Vaishnavi Ministry. Please post. Anyone would like to share anything? There, Victoria has already posted our email to the Vaishnavi Ministry. Please contact us. We'd love to hear from you. We're always looking for, including Vaishnavis and, strengthening this team that we have here so we can
Yes.
serve everyone else. Yes, ma'am.
Govinda Priya Devi Dasi, thank you so much. Regarding the information on contacting the Vaishnavi Ministry, I think it's very essential that we understand the proper venue to connect with. I have a number of, items that I will be contacting the ministry about regarding Vaishnavis, those who are not yet initiated, and actually, connecting with people who do not have a full understanding of the beauty of bhakti yet, in some services that I've been doing. So I look forward to, I sent you a message. Please contact me so that we can further develop this.
Sure. I do not have your contact, Mitravinda Prabhu, but I dropped my personal email as well. If there's anything confidential or anything that you would like to personally write to me, please feel free. My email is there. And if you want to contact the ministry, I do have access. I do check. But, our team here, Tiffany and Victoria, handle most of the Vaishnavi Ministry emails. But if there's anything specific.
Victoria too? Oh, perfect. That's this. I know her very well. Thank you.
Yeah.
But also Shamya?
Shamagopi.
I forget her name. I'll contact her as well. I am a 20-year resident here in Philadelphia at Newland Lachila Dham. Some things have changed recently, but I'm very, very much inspired to continue my Guru Maharaj's mission of preaching Krishna consciousness, Bhakti Tirtha Swami. So thank you.
Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj has really always been in the spirit. And he's definitely a great inspiration for all of us here, specifically talking about myself. So thank you so much, Mitravinda Prabhu, for expressing yourself. And we always send out these, volunteer forms. Please take the time. Any feedback you have, do not hesitate. Write to the ministry, or you can personally email me. Any corrections, improvements, we are here to serve you. So we are absolutely open to any suggestions, comments, concerns, anything that you have. Please write to us. It encourages us that, we're being noticed. We want to help you. We want to serve you. And we can't serve you till the time we know what the needs are. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Shamagopi, Shamasakis, the twins. And Victoria and Tiffany, I cannot be more grateful to you for, your assistance and hard work, and to all of you for joining and making this so informative and live. And the Sangha is also very encouraging to me. So very grateful. And I think we can stop here if everyone's got all the emails and messages that you want from the chat. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Jai Vaishnavi Ministry ki jai.
Jai.
Hi, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol.
Hare Bol.